Welcome to this special presentation by the New Bedford Festival Theatre of Interview with the Stars. In the upcoming weeks, we are going to be, for your entertainment and for your edification, interviewing several keynote people who have appeared in our past shows. And I know you will enjoy that, and we will announce them so you will know who will be coming up in the upcoming weeks. Today, I am absolutely delighted to introduce our first guest in the series, and it couldn't make me happier than to say it's Betsy Padamonsky, who all of you saw last year in our very popular production of Mamma Mia. She played Donna Sheridan, the leading lady in the show. So, Betsy, welcome to this show today, and I'm so happy you had the time to come and spend with us.
Hi, Armand. Hi, New Bedford. How's everyone doing? I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's so great to see you.
Well, yes, and same here. And you have been very good about keeping in contact. And I am sure that everybody out there listening today and watching are going to be thrilled about some of the things that you will be telling us. The first thing I wanted to get down to business right away. I wanted to ask you, was there, when you were a child, a movie, a stage presentation, something that lit the flame of your desire to be an actress?
Well, I think growing up, as questionable as it is now looking back as a child watching this movie, I would watch Grease a lot. And there was very adult themes in the movie, but as a child, I didn't pay attention to that. I just loved the singing and the dancing. And I just remember wearing that VHS tape out because I would just watch it, hit rewind, watch it again, hit rewind. And I loved that. I also was very obsessed from a young age with ABBA. So I felt like Mamma Mia was always destined to be a part of my future. And I would put on shows to the ABBA Gold album in my basement for my family.
That is so funny. But I think everybody has a history of ABBA in their background. I know George and I in our first apartment played ABBA 24 hours a day. And that was quite a few years ago now. But it's an interesting thing that the music is so infectious. I think obviously would appear, and it did, in our own production of it. Everybody came out to see it. It was the highest attended show in our 30-year history. So that bespeaks a lot about the power of ABBA. So
yes.
The other thing I wanted to ask you as well, on top of that, was there a figure, a person, a performer who absolutely impressed you to such a point that you were inspired to want to become that performer? Not just seeing a movie, but maybe a particular performer.
Well, I always loved, speaking of movies, I would see they would play The Sound of Music on TV. I remember yearly, it would always be on TV, and my mom and I would watch it, and I loved Julie Andrews. And to see her just completely take the stage with poise and grace and just be able to transform herself and reinvent herself into all these different iconic roles throughout history and have a career that spanned decades and just be a massive inspiration. I was completely awe-inspired by her.
And I think anybody who's ever seen The Sound of Music would say casting her in the lead was perfection. You simply can't imagine anybody else in it. And she certainly, throughout the rest of her career, inspired many people to go on and continue working in the performing arts. Now, I know that you grew up in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to ask a question. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have 3 older siblings. I'm the youngest of 4.
And so having 3 older siblings, did they try to protect you? Did they look upon their a little sister as being a gem, a precious jewel, or how do they treat you?
Well, I say because I have two older brothers and an older sister, so I don't know that my older brothers thought I was a gem or a jewel growing up because I was the little annoying sister bugging them and wanting to hang out and always be a part of everything. But they absolutely took care of me and paved the way for me to grow into just whoever I wanted to be. And my brother, who's closest in age to me, always looked out for me. It still looks out for me. And it's just been so nice to have that tight-knit family.
And so what does he do for a career?
My brother's a physical therapist.
Oh, wow. Well, we need physical therapists.
Oh, after sitting on buses or traveling the world or dancing on a stage at sea, I would go home and just be cracking and creaking and say, fix me. Tell me what's wrong with my body.
So it's very convenient having him as a brother.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. It's amazing. We do need everybody, don't we? And when they say it takes a small village to do a show, they're not kidding about that either. You certainly covered the United States from coast to coast and every place in between when you started as Donna in the farewell tour of Mamma Mia. Now, the question that comes most readily to my mind is, how did you feel when you went back to Pennsylvania? Did you see Pennsylvania in a different way?
Well, coming from a small town, I think it was really important to have that close-knit family, close-knit small town vibe and bond. And I almost felt that way because it's a small town, the railroad industry. We're near Pittsburgh as well, where the steel mills, and there's a lot of coal mines in the mountains around Pennsylvania. And it almost reminded me of the feel I had in New Bedford when I came, having a small town with a really supportive community. And I had seen the world, and it gave me a better appreciation for all of the small towns and the smaller cities, because it is a vast world, but you come back and that feels like home. And I felt like I was home when I was in New Bedford, which was really nice.
It's so interesting. It's so fascinating because it's always been my theory. I'm always amazed when you meet somebody in New York and they tell you they were born in New York, because that really is generally the exception, not the rule. So many people show up in New York and they are going to pursue their careers. So it's, and crisscrossing the country made you appreciate your roots, I'm assuming you're saying at this point. So that was, and your parents were great. It was so lovely to meet your parents last summer as well. So there's so many interesting things we have to talk about today. So could you tell us what perhaps was your first moment on stage, what that was like? How old were you?
It's hard to remember. I mean, I guess a lot of times in life, we just, those moments, it's easier to encapsulate the feelings during that time because the memories aren't there, verbatim what you did. But I can remember I was 4.5 or 5. My parents took us on it was a little traveling show throughout Pennsylvania to make people aware of the impact we were having on the environment. And it was a show that the Ecumenical Council in our town wrote called Alice in Blunderland. It was a take on Alice in Wonderland, and she was entering all these areas of her dream world. However, it was all being destroyed by the impacts we were having as the human race on the environment. So I can't really remember that other than just being really excited because all my siblings were in it with me at that time, and seeing Pennsylvania and doing these shows. But the first time when I did Annie, I played the smallest orphan, and I was 5 at that point.
So that was your first time on stage.
A big stage. I was on small stages with that other traveling show, and
this was a big stage production.
Correct. It's a theater in Altoona, Pennsylvania called the Mishler, and it was an old vaudeville house, and it housed a lot of famous people, and it reminds me a lot of the theater in New Bedford. It's a beautiful space. It is very rich in history and just opulent, and I was lucky enough for that to be my community theater. Like, I didn't understand what the community theater wasn't on this scale that I grew up doing community theater. It can be, but it also, I was really lucky that was where I got to perform and have.
Now, when you were going through your schooling in your, let's say, public school years or your years in high school, was there another field of study that might have turned your head for a little while before you really centered in on performing arts?
I think that a lot. I wonder if there had been anything else, and this just was a clear-cut path for me my entire life. So it just was completely, it engulfed my entire being. It sounds dramatic to say that, but that's all I wanted to do, and that was the only thing. And I didn't have when I say I was really lucky, my parents didn't force me to have a backup career. They did want me to have a degree, which I'm thankful for, but it just never was on the table that I didn't even dream I would do anything else. Now, as an adult, I look into other things, and I've really gotten into fitness and yoga and meditation and different things. And I would say if I had to choose now, another area of a career would be wellness.
It was interesting that I think a lot of people that have been dedicated to a career in theater pretty much always had that inclination from way back. So I'm going to be asking you next, what was when you went to New York, what was the first Broadway show that you saw?
Okay, the very first show I ever saw that was touring was at the Kennedy Center, and that was Phantom of the Opera. Amazing.
Wow.
I think I was 8 years old at the time. I was really lucky because my uncle put together bus trips, and we would always take buses from Pennsylvania to go see shows in Pittsburgh and New York and in Washington, D.C. But I think the first show I saw on Broadway, again, another show that I had no idea of themes. I think it was Miss Saigon. And I just remember being like, wow, I love those girls dancing in those bikinis. And like not realizing as a child that what I was watching. But I remember the impact and knowing that it was a highly emotional show. It was a show that was sung throughout. And that's what I was drawn to. I like the story, the really, a dramatic story involving I just like those kind of shows. I don't know how to describe why I like those shows.
It is. It's an intense show. A lot of people always say that after they've seen it, that it was very intense for them to sit through that entire production. I have another question. Most people land on their 2 feet in New York City when they're starting a career. What was the first non-theater job that you held in New York City?
Well, I started out temping, which I enjoyed, we would just, they call you in the morning and they say, go to this office, you go, and I can type really fast. So that was good. And I can follow directions. And as an actor, sometimes you have to just pretend to know what you're doing. So I was good at that. But then I realized I couldn't get to auditions in the daytime temping in offices. So I got a job at a very well-known restaurant right in the theater district, and I stayed there for a long time in New York as the hostess. And it was a restaurant that a lot of theater people and a lot of famous people would attend, and I got to be at the door.
What's the name of the restaurant?
It's called Eska. It's on 43rd and 9th.
Oh, I know Eska, of course.
They took really good care.
Yeah, it's a great place, and it's right near the Actors High Rise buildings.
That's it. It's right in the courtyard
It's
there.
right in the courtyard, which is fabulous. One of
Mhm.
the things I want to do a little digression. Where did you go to school to get your training?
I went to Point Park University in Pittsburgh.
Ah,
Mhm.
and you majored in theater arts?
Yep, and I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
That's excellent. And what did you consider at that point was your strongest suit? What were you very, very confident in doing in terms of the various avenues of performance?
I think for me, I was always the most confident in my singing. And then I realized that without fine tuning my acting and really working on acting as a craft and living life to inform your acting, I was just singing. It was just a voice. And I think that anybody who is aspiring to be a performer or an actor or wants to even be a singer, you must engage the audience. And the way to engage the audience is to be an actor and tell a story. So I didn't let my singing go. I just had to trust my technique, trust my singing. I'm always studying, always learning, but then really start to ask myself the questions about storytelling and conveying that to the audience. So singing,
What
and then I had to work on acting.
what led you to Norwegian Cruise Lines?
My best friend from college, he was working for Norwegian, and he had said to me, "You've got to come do this with me. It is so much fun. You will love it. I think it'd be great. You can save some money. You can," and it was in 2008, whenever the city, we were in the middle of the recession, and it just made sense. So I kept auditioning, excuse me, and it was by dumb luck that my best friend and I got to do the ship together. And I left the city thinking, oh, I'm just going to go out for a year or 6 months and then come right back to New York. Well, I stayed for 7.5 years. So
7.5 years?
yes.
Wow.
Not consistent. I mean, you do 5 months here, 6 months here, take 2 months off, and back and forth. So,
That's interesting. And was your first capacity as a performer on the cruise ship?
yeah,
That's terrific.
It
I was very fortunate for you. And that's great training.
It is. And that was the thing. I at first was very hesitant to leave the city because you worry everyone's going to forget about you. All the contacts you've made are going to be gone. Well, in all actuality, I wasn't performing every night in the city. I was working at the restaurant. And so
Right.
people said to me, well, why do you want to leave New York to go on a cruise ship? I thought, well, I get to perform every night. I'm saving a lot of money to pay off. I had my college loans at the time. And I'm seeing the world all with my best friend. I actually met my husband there, which was why we stayed so long.
So that's interesting. That's how you met Ian, of course. And what was Ian doing on the cruise ship at that point? Was he a performer?
No, Ian was in charge of all the VIP travel and tours, and he was a head diver for a long time. My husband has had many careers, and it's wild because he's able to shift very easily into other things and master them. And I'm not saying that because he's my husband and I think he's great. It's so admirable, and it's such a talent. And when I talk to other performers, we're like, I could never do anything else. The thought of doing something else terrifies me. And with everything happening right now, I've had to, open that box up and say, what else could I do if things shift a little bit? And yeah, so yes, that's what he was doing on board.
I know it's interesting. And we oftentimes think that, and how fortunate we are if we can find steady work in theater. It's a very important thing. And now it's a challenging time for all of us.
Right.
And it's difficult, but I think being optimistic and continuing to hone our talents and to think of ingenious ways of performing, I think we're all going to get through this, which I think is probably one of the messages we want everybody to hear today. So that's all very interesting. So did you meet Ian at the first time that you were on the cruise ship? Was that at the beginning? Did you know him right from the start?
You know, I knew him. He said that he saw me in the gym on the ship, and my best friend and a couple other of the guys, and that's why I say it was the best training ever. They were showing me how to walk like a showgirl in the gym, and I was up, I guess, in the gym walking around, and he saw me up there, and I might have waved, and then we became friends within the first 6 weeks that I was on board. That's funny.
All right, I want to ask you, one of the things that absolutely has fascinated me from when I first saw your resume and read that you had done the farewell tour, how long, first of all, was that tour?
It was a year.
Okay. And how many cities did you play to?
Oh, I have no idea. I can say we did 284 performances. And we stand, I would say, from the tip of Florida all the way up to Calgary and through Canada. We were in Canada as well, North America as well.
Wow.
It was a North American tour.
So what was it like in terms of endurance? And you were playing Donna, so you were on stage all night. What was that like for you? Do you have any positive thoughts of how you managed to perform every night when you were on that tour?
It's very challenging at first, and it's also challenging for somebody like myself who wants to go full throttle from day one. And you have to let yourself build that endurance, and you have to be patient with yourself. And that took me a long time realizing that when I would be in rehearsals for shows, the first 3 days, and I would sing full out all day for 8 hours in a rehearsal room, and I would be exhausted after the third day, and you think, wait, how does everybody else do this? Because you have to pace yourself. You have to find your limits every day, and that's a personal thing. I know people that could sing for 8 hours a day at full voice all day, every day, and be fine. I like to be able to give 100% to the show. So when I'm in rehearsals or when I'm in a show like Mamma Mia, where I'm doing 8 shows a week and playing Donna, I have to go to sleep at a decent time. I have to get 8 hours of sleep, tons of water, work out, stretch, take care of my body. It's like an athlete. You have to treat your body with respect.
Of course.
And yeah.
Right, and a lot of people don't, the audience they're not always aware of these things that are incumbent upon any performer to take care of the mechanism, the voice particularly, and then the body. It's not easy to do, particularly when you're on the road. That's why I was asking you that question. Now, when you were touring throughout that North American tour, was there a particular place that you appeared in, not so much the theater, but a town, a city that particularly appealed to you?
I always love Seattle. The Pacific Northwest is, if we could find a way to make our lives work in the Pacific Northwest, I feel like it is just one of the most beautiful places on earth. And
I have to agree with you. George and I spent a week in Seattle about 10 years ago, and I was bowled over at how beautiful it was. And we were lucky. We were there for 7 days and never rained once. And they always say, that there's a heavy rain season, but it was just magnificent. Yeah, so that's great. I agree with you 100%. That was an amazing place. Now, when you're touring and you go, did you end up playing the Pantages Theater in LA?
We did not. It played Pantages the year before. So there
Ah,
were a lot of places they wanted to include on the farewell tour, but they had just done it the year before. And I think they were not nervous to go back because they were afraid they wouldn't be able to sell in the same.
so here's another question. Was there any person of note, a celebrity, a politician, a sports figure,
Oh,
some
it's Frank
famous
Kane.
person who saw the show with you as the lead and met you after the show or went back to say hello?
I don't think that we had any um major celebrities come see the show because I think at that point the show had been running for 16 years and I feel like it had already been you know, exposed to all of this. All of the celebrities had already seen it that wanted to see it. I will say I am a huge fan of Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser, but I also love him just as a human. He's a great person. And I had asked him if he wanted to come see the show, but he wrote back to me personally and said he was unable to attend. And I thought that was really cool that he was so personable and friendly and took time out of his day to say, because he's a big supporter of musical theater in New York. And yeah.
It's
I think
interesting because you never know. You actually never really know who was in the audience. And
no.
years ago, we were doing a production at the Zeiterion Performing Arts Center of a chorus line. And unbeknownst to us, who came to see the show was Chita Rivera.
Wow.
Everybody, and she was able to slip in and out of the theater. Uh, we all knew that she was there, but we didn't call attention to her. And we said something to her before she left, but she was able to slip in and out of the theater without too much commotion. So you don't know. We didn't know she was going to be there. So it was very interesting. That's why I always ask that question,
Yeah.
because you just never know.
You never know.
Okay. And the other things I would like to say is you were in New Bedford for about 4 weeks,
Mhm.
and did you have any particular fond memories of New Bedford?
I definitely loved, like I said before, the hometown feel, the small town vibe. I loved being able to walk around the area and just really feel like you were a member of the town. It was beautiful. And I really loved the theater. And I loved, now I'm going to forget the name because I can't think, the coffee shop right by the theater that had juice. Amazing. I am a coffee fan. If people don't know, I am obsessed with coffee and good coffee, and that was one of the
It's
really.
on the top of your resume.
It is on the. I love it. It's yeah. I'm a coffee fan. Big fanatic.
Now, a big question.
Mm.
The one person in your life who has been the greatest inspiration for you as an actress?
Mm. Wow, that's a big one. You know, I've had so many people come and go in my life, and not so many go because I like to keep people around. That's or I like to always.
You do a very good job of that, by the way, keeping people around.
I like to keep people connected, and sometimes you won't talk to them for a little while, but I feel like with the connections I've made over the years, they feel genuine and real, and I seek those type of people out because I look forward to that. I love human connection and interaction. I know that this is going to sound cheesy, and this person hasn't had the impact of me on me because of their actors themselves, but my husband Ian has been the person from the day I met him, always encouraging me and believing in me. And I think that that's one of the hardest things for us to remember as performers, because you're always going to have to grow and learn and teach yourself and be. I think that's any area of life. You should always keep learning and always want to be learning. And it sounds, like I said, so cheesy that I'm like, my husband's my biggest inspiration, but he is, because he's always learning. He's always challenging himself. He always reminds me that the only thing constant in life is change. And we have to keep going with that change and progressing with it. And I think that as an actor, you have to embrace that. And if you hold on to, the shows that you were in that were amazing, you will always be living in the past, and you have to be moving forward. And it's great to remember those special moments and hold them dear and let them inform your performance as an actor in the future, but also release them so you can move forward.
So you made the right choice.
I did.
Ian asked you to get married, that you said yes. But it's very true. I think in so many marriages, I know that I would not be able to be doing anything that I've done over the years in theater without my husband, George. It would be totally impossible, always a constant inspiration. So we're lucky if we have somebody in our lives that is the constant. That's great to hear. Now, the last thing I want to ask you, because you have made such an impact on the city of New Bedford, upon the entire United States, into Canada, the North American tour, I keep saying. I just want to know what you would advise any young person who wants to break into the business at this point in time. What would your advice be?
I think that, again, it's really hard to be tenacious and never give up, but that is, and it sounds so trite and sounds so like obvious information, but it's the truth. You should never give up, and you should always keep going and always believe in yourself. Again, this is stuff that people will say over and over again, but till you truly grasp that. I also think that with the current situation the world is in, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to go with it. You have to be willing to be innovative. Things might change. The face of theater as we know it could change, and it is changing. We just have to be willing to embrace it. And if you still want to be a part of it, be a part of it. And anybody young, I think as well, find things that you love and you love to do that invigorate and feed your soul like theater does, because I think that you have to identify yourself as something other than just an actor, because for so long, that's all I called myself was, oh, I'm Betsy, I'm an actor. Well, you have to have other things in life, because if you don't have any, there has to be a balance. So if you love it, follow it 100% and go with the flow and embrace the change.
Certainly being an actor is an all-involving lifestyle. It's not easy to separate parts of your life. It all has to have a flow. That's what I would, it sounds like that's what you were saying, pretty much, is that you have to go with the flow of what's going on and hope for the best always. Be always optimistic.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
Betsy, I can't thank you enough today, and I'm determined that at one point George and I will get down to Florida, down to Tampa, and be able to take you and Ian out to dinner. That is one thing that I sincerely want to do, and you can show us around Tampa. I've only been there once in my life, and it was for a short amount of time, so I'm sure you know all the high spots. And so I want to thank you for this, and I want to thank Ian for being such a good engineer and assisting you in this particular interview.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, and be well, both you and Ian. That's my wish to both of you. Be well.
Thank you so much, and you as well. Take care, and love to everybody there, and love to everybody in New Bedford. And yeah, we're gonna all get through this, and soon enough,
yes, we will.
Again.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hi everyone, Betsy Padamonsky here. We hope that you enjoyed my interview with Armand, and we hope that you're enjoying New Bedford Festival Theater's new online programming. With the postponement of Annie this summer, we need your help now more than ever. If you're able to donate even a small amount, that would be super appreciated. Please visit nbfestivaltheater.com to donate, and thank you so much for your time.